Welcome back to the More Than ADHD podcast, episode 25, Unshaming ADHD, one voice at a time. Do you have a big project you've been avoiding? Don't feel ashamed. We're going to teach you how to get started on that and why it's so important to change the way that you think about it. Hey, if this is your first time stopping by the More Than ADHD podcast, sure would love to have you subscribe, like, follow, share with everybody in your neighborhood. I bet they could learn a thing or two. So welcome to the show. And you know what? I love all the guests that we have, but today's guest is one that's very special to me. And I'm so excited to introduce all of our listeners and our viewers to my friend, my mentor, and my fellow ADHD coach, Stuart Cohen. Over to you, True Stu.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for having me here. I am really excited. Got really cool stuff to share. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We got good stuff to share with you today.
We're so glad that you're here. So let's jump into it. Stu, would just love to know if you could share with everyone sort of our origin story, how we met.
We were at the International Conference on ADHD. I didn't know anybody. I just knew people by names and pictures on social media and in various groups I was in as I began to integrate into the community as a brand new certified coach. And then I saw you there. I'm like, this guy looks like fun. He's cool. He's brilliant. And start talking with you. And then I said, hey, Coach, do you have a mentor? and you said, no, why? You want to be mine? And I was like, okay. And I couldn't believe I actually said that and asked that. And those are the best words I've ever asked. And the best word I ever heard in response was yes.
Yes, I did say yes, because not only did Stu ask me if he could be my mentor, he was kind enough to take me out to breakfast at the conference. And we've been honestly in touch. I've been in touch with Stuart more often than most people in my life ever since that day. So thank you, Stu, for being such a special part of my life.
You're welcome. And I thank you because the wisdom I've learned from you and our experiences together and our giggles and laughs and some of the projects we've done have been life-changing. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm so excited for everyone listening or watching because I know they're going to gain a ton out of this too. So I want to jump into it. Today, we're talking about ADHD Unshamed. Can you just shed some light on what is that concept? Because I see you believe in it. You have it on the wall behind you.
How can we begin to lift the stigma? How can we begin to empower ADHDers to speak their truths, to live their happiest lives? And how can we tell the rest of the world, hey, we're not broken, we're not different, we're not limited. We're just people with an interesting gift, sometimes a challenge. So I came up with this concept of unshame. Of course, it's not a real word, but I love making up words. How do we unshame it? Because that's what holds us back, Ryan. When we're saddled with shame, we're riddled with guilt, we're just saddled down with regrets. If we can lift that shame, lift the regrets, and feel free and feel comfortable in our skin, who we are, we can live our best lives. And everybody in our circles will be happier being with us too.
I'm so glad that you bring that up because when you talk about shame and the power of lifting that, it immediately makes me think of ADHD Online. As those of you who are listening might know, ADHD Online are the wonderful podcast sponsors that we partner with. And they're helping people all over the United States to lift the shame of that stigma of ADHD by helping people. They're completely revolutionizing the way that those of us with ADHD or who suspect we might have ADHD get diagnosed. And so in less than 24 hours, if you are thinking, this sounds familiar, you can get a diagnosis from ADHD Online. All you have to do is use this discount code, Coach Ryan 50, after you visit ADHDonline.com, and you can get $50 off. Everyone who listens or follows the podcast, I'm always just an open book. And Stu and I have overcome a ton of challenges just to even make this happen. We've got landscaping crews on Stu's side, on my side. We've got internet issues. it's amazing. Things seem challenging. That's okay. And that's exactly why we keep going. That's why we keep going. And Stu, one thing that you have kept going on is writing this book. There's a lot of things that you told me you've gained, insights that have come during this process. What are some of the things that have been the biggest pearls of wisdom that you've come across?
I have tried my best to narrow it down to like 5 takeaways I'd like to share with you upon completing 70 of these. I don't call them interviews, I call them conversations with everyday ADHDers to try to get an idea of what they experience, what the differences are in their brands of ADHD. And at the end of the day, we're kind of all the same. We're like one big family. So I have 5 takeaways that I'd like to share that I would hope will begin the process for everyone who's watching or listening of unshaming their ADHD. And if they're not the ones with the ADHD, but their friend or family or partner is, to get a perspective that they may not have heard before.
Wow, I love this. So let's just jump right in. What's the first of these nuggets of wisdom?
First one is diagnosis brings clarity and relief. And I use both of those words, clarity and relief. And before I give a bigger description, I'd like to read a couple of quotes from actual interviews. It explained all of my childhood. It explained all of my weird decisions throughout my life, my career path, my relationships. Everything is suddenly making sense. And I'd like to share one more to give everyone an idea. And I'm wondering if, Coach, if as I'm reading this, anybody who's in the audience, if they agree with this, if they feel the same when they got diagnosed. And I would hope if they're on the fence about it, that they might consider getting a diagnosis, because I would hope this would encourage them to, because maybe they feel shame about going to get tested. So let me read this other quote.
Please.
Once I realized that I wasn't stupid, just barely scraping, knowing now what I was up against, knowing what kind of help I needed, and that this was not going to be a total lost cause, I decided to go back to grad school. So I would hope both of these quotes would share how life-changing it was for these 2 different people getting diagnosed. It put the pieces of their puzzle together. Like I say about me personally, the mystery of me was solved, and it was a brand new chapter.
How old were you when you got diagnosed, by the way?
I was in my 40s. I was in my mid 40s. I was late diagnosed, and I was shocked. I never would have believed it because I thought it was just for kids.
Right, which is one of the common myths that we as content creators and coaches are out there trying to raise the awareness to bust these myths that ADHD is so much more than a child's condition. It's not just grade school boys, as we just heard. It's grad school boys, not just grade school boys. And so for anyone right now who, if you're hearing this and you are feeling like you're on the fence, I mean, I had a client who was in his 80s who got diagnosed. And he said he's now, it's 5 years since. And he said, Ryan, these have been 5 of the best years of my life because I now understand. And it all makes so much more sense. And that goes back to your point, Stu. So if you're even thinking about it, you owe it to yourself to check out ADHD Online. I have found that there is no better resource than ADHDonline.com. You can go there and at checkout, if you're getting your diagnosis, you can use discount code, which I'll put it right here up on the screen, Coach Ryan 50 for $50 off, which brings it to just a little bit over $100. And you can get your results back from a certified clinical professional in as little as 12 hours. It's just ridiculous. So, Stu, clarity and relief. That's incredible. Is there more to say about that one, or are we on to our next nugget?
I would like to add that
Yeah.
out of the 70 people I've talked to so far, and my personal experience coaching so many people of different ages, the the older somebody gets, when they find out, when it's validated, some of them are like, I knew it all along, but I just needed to know for sure. Right. So even that was powerful. Like, I finally know. And for the other half of the people, it was like, for me, wait, what? And you start this whole journey of self-discovery, which actually leads to the second big takeaway that I'd like to share. It was, and this is deeply emotional, and as people share this with me, they got all teary-eyed. And takeaway two that I've learned that will be in the book is self-acceptance comes next.
Mm.
Because we have a choice, right, Coach? We can fight it and deny it, or ignore it, and life doesn't get any easier just because we know. So it's a choice we can make. I'd like to read this. It's very powerful, about this one midlife woman who was diagnosed and her experience with it. And I'm wondering if anyone listening or watching right now, if this resonates with you. I would love to hear it, because we're on this mission together, right? Of helping everyone manage through it and live life, as I like to say, happily ever after. Quote, I'm not stupid. I'm not lazy. I'm not disorganized. I spent so much time beating myself up. There you go again. You messed up again. How could you forget that? How could you be a bad worker? How could you be a bad mom? And it turns out I'm not stupid. I'm not ignorant. I'm not disorganized. I'm challenged in a way that I need to set up both medication and life protocols to manage it. Yeah, that's why I feel free. Oddly enough, being diagnosed with a brain condition has been a huge self-esteem boost.
And I never would have thought of it as getting the diagnosis as having a self-esteem boost. How does that work?
Well, you figure out who you are. You make sense of your past. And instead of spending all this time looking in the rearview mirror and having shame and carrying around regret, you can look forward. What outcomes can I change in my future?
Wow.
How can I live life happily and healthily? And part of this whole process, which is actually going to lead to takeaway three, about that self-acceptance, we have a lot of internal work to do.
Sure.
When we've been diagnosed. And once we're able to do that and understand who we are, what our triggers are, right? And how sometimes we feel we need to overshare or mask, then we can get into the outside world with a lot more ease, because we're comfortable with, because people can sense when we're not comfortable in our own skin. That's why this is so important, to come to terms with it and to say, yep, I've got the old ADHD and I'm going to make my life great. I'm going to figure me out.
I can't even stress enough how big of an impact this is, just even hearing it. So the fact that you've had 70 of these conversations, I can't even imagine how powerful this is, because regardless if someone is 17 or 70, up to this point, we've believed that we are somehow flawed, broken, less than, because we've been trying to shoehorn ourselves in our brain and holding ourselves to this neurotypical standard that the world is sort of expecting of us, when in reality, that wasn't even really possible, because we were trying to do it the way everyone else was doing it. I can see why these have been powerful for you.
Yeah. What's super cool is, in writing this book, it's not only been cathartic and freeing and liberating for everyone I've talked to, but it's been huge for me too. I'm learning so much. I get so much insight that as that we may have the ADHD diagnosis, but we all have different brands of ADHD, and we're so similar. There were so many similar characteristics, like not being comfortable in our own skin and masking. Masking is a big one, right? Which is imposter syndrome too. We mask because we don't feel worthy. We don't feel comfortable, confident. We feel judged, right? So I'd like to go to number 3,
Please
which
do.
is discover the true you. And as you know, Coach Ryan, in all the times we talk, inevitably you hear me say, this is True Stu talking, or you ask me, hey, I got to ask True Stu a question. Just by saying those words. So I wonder, anyone out there, can you say that and feel it and mean it? Can you say true Ryan? Can you say true Stacy, true Linda, true Bob, true Frank? That's the work. That's the work we can do to say it with confidence. And sometimes we need to say it to help us get there too, right? To convince ourselves, like a positive affirmation. I'd like to read another quote about this whole concept of masking. And this was a woman who was diagnosed later in life. ADHD diagnosis later in life creates an untangling of identity. I love those words she used. Untangling of identity. What parts of me are real? What parts of me have I been suppressing? What parts of me have I been putting out there that are real? Have I been faking it this whole time? Am I an imposter in my own life? So she was reflecting back on this time where she was discovering the true her, the true person that she was. And once we identify with ourselves, we can begin to love ourselves. We can begin to accept ourselves. And once we're comfortable with who we are, we're true to ourselves, everyone outside who feels our energy will feel that energy too. Coach, I remember in my life, personal anecdote, I just went through so much of my life with this frown because I was stuck in my head all the time. Like, why is it always racing? I can't relax. Everyone's against me. It's a giant conspiracy. The whole world's talking about me, right? Like, I felt that important. Everyone was talking about me. And once I released that, I started to live life with a smile. I started to look up. I started to say hello to people. And it changed everything in my world, in my life. We know we are what we pay attention to.
Mm.
And if you pay attention to, if you pay attention to the fact that, hey, I'm worthy, I'm good, I am far from perfect, but I know who I am. Everyone senses that. And we live with a bit more ease in everyday life.
I'm so glad that you're bringing some of this up because it makes me think about some of the conversations that have been in the Ryan Mayer coaching community, our digital community, where people are able to show up as their authentic self. They're feeling the acceptance. It's that magical feeling that both you and I experienced at our ADHD conferences that we went to, where it's okay to be you, to just be the true you. So that's the question I would have to everyone who's listening is, do you know the true you? Have you untangled what your ADHD means? Have you been free enough to remove the mask? If you're out there and you feel like you're doing this all alone, just know you don't have to do it that way anymore. Stu, myself, and others, the RMC digital community is here for you. You can get the link to that down in the show notes. You can find it in my profile on all the socials. But just know that we know how hard this can feel and how hard it can be, and don't do it alone, which I think, Stu, is one of the points you were going to bring up, right?
It's about community. It's about find your people, right? I remember when I went to conference, that was the first time ever I was with people wired like me.
Mm.
That was the first time ever I truly felt truth too.
And again, how old were you at that point?
Oh my goodness. I was already in my mid 50s.
Right. And no one would guess that Stuart is a day older than 42 by watching this podcast, because to me, age ain't nothing but a number. But that's one of the benefits of us with ADHD having a youthful approach to life. But yeah, it is true. And I felt the same way. So regardless of what your age is, as you're hearing this message, maybe you're here for a reason. that you have found your team, your crew.
Yeah, and I'd be curious if who among our audience have experienced this. What like that first time, even meeting one other person, let alone being with a group. And these are some of the questions that I ask during my conversation, during the interview process, which actually will lead me to takeaway number 4. So, takeaway number 4 is basically the information, the emotions that I gathered from asking people this question. I said to them, let's play pretend. If I was in a room with your closest peeps, your family, your friends, your most loyal people who you love and they love you, but you were not in that room. I was in that room and I looked around the room and I said, what words would you use to describe Ryan? What would they say?
They'd say, I don't know, Ryan. Who are you talking about?
Well played. And Ryan, this was such an effective, such a powerful, such a liberating question because they stepped out of who they were. Because if I had asked them, tell me about you, I'd probably hear some negative, little positive, some negative, some positive. But you know how we tend to be. We're champion butts, right? We say something positive and it's always followed by a negative. So what happened was they stepped outside themselves and they thought of how their friends and family viewed them. And it was all positive. Words like
Wow.
creative, loyal, I am helpful, I am loving, I am fun, I am big energy. Just the words that you would think people would say, but we may not use those words to describe ourselves. And if we tied together takeaway 3 and 4, as you're on that mission of discovering the true you, what a great place to start. Ask your closest friends and family, hey, give me 5 words that describe me. What do you think of me? And I did this exercise, Ryan. I did this exercise. And I was weeping when I received
Wow.
responses, and they were so similar. That gave me such a confidence boost, and it helped open up that door, take off that mask that, you know what, I am loved. I wonder how everyone would answer this question, because I want every single ADHDer to answer this question, because the results will be life changing.
What other questions did you ask?
So this was another make-believe question. I would say, hey, let's time travel. They'd be like, okay,
Yes. Love time travel.
if you could travel to your past, if you could talk to the younger you, what would you tell them? What would you tell the younger you? Now, I won't tell you, coach, everyone I asked leaned back in their chair. Their eyes got all teary. They really gave this thought. And not one of the people I spoke to, of all 70 people, of all ages, of all ethnicities, of all, you name it, the big mix of people, nobody said, I'd tell them to do this different. I'd have them change this different. You know, it wasn't about regrets.
Wow.
It was support. Fine. Isn't it a strange thing that we're typically very empathetic people, right? We
Right.
care for people so much. We take on their burdens. We want to love on them. We want to fix their problems because we care so much. Wouldn't it be lovely if we gave ourselves that same love and attention and empathy and understanding? That's a big pivot we can all make in our lives. And it's a step-by-step process, but at least knowing it's possible and knowing that everyone I talk to would show nothing but love and support for their younger selves.
That's incredible. And I can only imagine the kind of insights that you've gained as you've gone through this. It can be tough for us to have that perspective, to be gentle on ourselves. That's what I found has been so powerful about coaching, both for myself, uh, having friends like you who are coaches, and working with my clients. So if you're thinking about it, both Stuart and I are coaches. there's other great coaches out there, reach out. You can book a call. There's information in the show notes about that. But if you're just wondering about what coaching is, you can check that out. I know that Stuart is accepting clients. I'm sending people to Stuart sometimes, and I have both group and one-on-one coaching. So would just really love to have you check into that. So Stuart, it makes me think about, all right, so you take all this in, and sometimes it's the follow through implementation that can be challenging. So is it structured? Are you kind of thinking that like on the back of each interview, if there were certain aha moments, are you going to be framing that up for questions? Like what's the format, I guess, of the book?
First and foremost, the format, wow, that's a tongue twister, is a book that I would want to read because they're going to be short chapters, easily digestible, yay, and they're going to be on point, like big butts. BUTS, big butts. We're big on butts because we use the word butt more than any other human beings on the planet, right? You know, that pivot. Hey, I'm a great chef. However, last night's meal was awful. I blew it, right? So the whole idea is to present the concept, right? And to lay it out, to back it up with some quotes from the research, to give perhaps an anecdote or two of my personal journey, and then here are some ideas you might take home. So I'd like the book to be a little bit of coaching too, to give some potential action steps, and also to tell people, hey, if you're cool, if you don't mask, do me a favor, tear these pages out. I want you to make this book your own and focus on the stuff that's speaking to you, because we all don't have the same challenges. We all don't have the same gifts. And they're going to be exercises and lots of visuals too, like a switch, like turning a switch on or off. If we start to ruminate, we have a choice. We can flip this switch. Thinking of it as a switch, taking a pause, saying, okay, I'm not going to react the way I've been reacting before because it really upsets my spouse. You can ask my wife. And I'm going to I'm going to try a different reaction. I'm going to switch that off and switch kindness on.
Well, as expected, this was incredible. As expected, there's more to talk about. We're going to have you back on the show. But in the meantime, what if people want to learn more, or if they would want to be part of the project? I mean, are you still open to that, or where do things stand there?
Great question. Although I have so much incredible information from these beautiful 70 people who already shared, my goal is 100.
Oh,
I know I set out to hit 100. So if you want to be part of that final group of 30, doesn't mean I'm going to stop there, because you know me, you can never get enough of a great thing, then they can just visit my website, ADHD Unshamed, and we can set up a little, Q&A, because the more people I get on my list, the more I'm held accountable for getting it done.
I love that. I'm grateful for all versions of you, true, Stu, and otherwise, and for the huge blessing you've been on my life. So thank you. And thank you for all the people that are listening and watching. If you did feel like you got value, please let us know that in the comments. And also, hopefully, you got some kind of inspiration out of this. And Stuart's first point was get validation, get clarity, get a diagnosis. And you can do that with ADHD Online. That's who we partner with. You can go to ADHDonline.com and you can put in this discount code, Coach Ryan50, for $50 off. That's the most that they allow when it comes to a discount. But Stu, any final words for anybody who is listening?
Slow down. Life is not an emergency. You're going to be okay. And surround yourself with positivity, positive affirmations, note cards everywhere, reminding you, because we tend to forget, out of sight, out of mind. Leave a positive note saying, you got this, you're worthy.
Incredible. And there's so much to unpack. Stu and I give so much away, including today's free resource is the Unlocking the Secret to Breaking Through the Overwhelm. So there's a link in the show notes for that free resource. We're here to help you. So just know, as always, you are more than your ADHD. I'm Coach Ryan, certified ADHD coach, master facilitator, corporate neuroinclusion consultant. And it's been my pleasure to introduce you to my mentor, True Stu. And we can't wait to have him back. But for now, just know you're beautiful just the way you are. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You're creative, resourceful, whole, and we will talk to you in the next episode.